If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and will heal their land.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Hello, Christian Patriots, and welcome to Church and State, where we strive to plug you into the pew and plug you into politics. I'm your host, Caleb Collier. With me, as always, Pastor Gabe Blomgren.
How's everybody doing, and how is my best friend and patriot doing today?
It's a great day, buddy. We had a fantastic event just the other day, and we had Trevor Loudon in town, and it was well attended. It was standing room only.
Yeah.
I had to stand in the back the whole time. It was
warm in there. There was a ton of bodies.
Yes, there was a lot of bodies, and there was a lot of talk exposing the communists and the socialists for exactly who they are. And we just so happen to be blessed to actually have Trevor Loudon in studio with us.
This is a huge blessing, and anybody who has been studying Maoist insurgencies or communism, they are going to be and democratic socialism, which is I learned a lot that I wasn't aware of last night. So this is going to be a very, very informative show.
Indeed. So let's just go ahead and introduce Trevor. Trevor, thank you so much for joining Church and State, especially in studio. This is a real treat for us. How's Spokane Coeur d'Alene been for you?
Look, it's great, and thanks for having me on, guys. And look, sincerely, this is one of my favorite parts of the country. It's a beautiful place here. And I remarked last night to my host, I said, why do the people look so young around here? And she said, because they're happy people here. You know, they're conservative, they're Christian, they are happy in their skins, and they live in a great place, and they don't age very much. So I can understand why.
We have no more Mayflower to get on, and we love this area, and you hit it on the nail on the head. Where else can we go? And I think a lot of us here, some people are running to Idaho, and which Idaho is this area, but I love this area, Trevor, and I appreciate you being here and stirring us up. Last night was powerful.
Well, thank you. You know, I come from New Zealand, and a lot of people say, well, you know, why would you come over here? And I say, look, if America goes down, every Western country falls. There is nowhere to run. And a lot of Americans would say to me a few years ago, they'd say, look, if things turn bad here, I want to go down to New Zealand. And I say, well, yeah, you can do that if you want to learn Chinese and have no freedom.
Exactly.
That's great. But there is nowhere to run if America falls. And this is a place we have to save, and it's so worth saving.
Amen. You know, it's interesting that you point that out, because I know a lot of expats that have moved down to New Zealand and Australia and these areas, and they think that they've got this secure location. But the only thing keeping the Chinese from invading all of these islands is the United States. And if we go, as you just said, you better learn Chinese.
Well, look. If the Seventh Fleet pulled out of the Pacific, the Chinese would just phone up our Prime Minister and say, look, we want to move 1 million people there in the next year. We want 3 military bases, a couple of naval bases, and our Prime Minister would say, yes, sir, thank you. And that would be it.
Yeah, that's truly terrifying to kind of even explore that possibility.
Yeah. Well, about four or 5 years ago, the Australian Minister of Defence, and if people don't know where Australia is, it's a little island off the west coast of New Zealand.
Just a little one.
Yeah, a little island. But the Australian Minister of Defence was up in China, and the Chinese general publicly said to him, now America, he said, Australia needs a godfather. The question is, will it be an American godfather or a Chinese godfather? If you are smart, you will choose China. We are the growing power in the region. Well, how do you think that makes us feel in New Zealand and Australia when Obama was cutting back the military at the time, you know? So we all, anybody who believes in Western values understands that the West stands with America. If America goes down, so do Western values and civilization for 1,000 years. Wow.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You know, America is the last stand against their globalist agenda, their globalist plans. And really, if you want to look at the model, the type of government that they want to establish as they project this, this globalist one world system, it is the Chinese communist system. That's exactly what they want for the entire globe.
Yeah, it is. And the myth that we're told is that communism is about this sharing equally and this communal living. No, no, it's not. What it is a centralized system where all wealth and power is in a very few hands. So you have a ruling class, a soldier class, and everybody else are peasants. And this is ideal for the globalists. This is ideal for the communists because they can still make money, they can still have a business, but the peasantry, the workers, are completely disciplined and do what they're told and work where they're assigned to. And this is just suits the elites down to the ground. The great Whittaker Chambers, who was a Soviet courier, a Communist Party member in the 30s, and a courier for the Soviet intelligence, who became a Christian. He left the Communist Party, and he used to joke. He would say, in America, the poorer classes are all Democrats. He said the middle class are all Republicans, and the upper class are all communists.
Wow.
And it wasn't far off the mark.
That is so true. Trevor, you were talking a bit with me before we got on air here, and I had a question for you about Bernie Sanders. And I think explaining how the elites feel about Bernie kind of lets everyone know how classical communism, as far as Lenin saw it, and the whole commune eventually being taken and everyone having an equal share. That's not a reality that will ever be seen because that's not the elite's plan. And can you explain to everyone why Bernie is never going to be electable, and then explain how Joe Biden is not even electable? Because you and I were talking about how he can't even make the ballot, in my opinion.
He can't make his bed.
He can't use the toilet right. We know that now.
Yeah, see, Bernie Sanders is stuck in the old communism of the 40s and the 50s. The old standard Stalinism with where the government runs everything and it's all sort of 5-year plans and commissars, and that's his mentality. And look, Bernie is a communist to his bootstraps. The only difference between democratic socialism and communism is 5 to 10 years. It's just a step along the way. Now, Bernie's people are still being trained by former East German communists. They have ties to French communists, Italian communists, Hungarian communists, Norwegian communists, you name it. But see, Bernie is of the old school. And in Britain, you had Jeremy Corbyn, who led the Labour Party into the last election against Boris Johnson. And he was of the Bernie Sanders old-style communism school. And he got smashed at the polls. So the Democratic Party are worried because they belong to more the corporate communist model. And they were worried that Bernie Sanders was going to drag them down and just destroy their ticket all the way to the bottom. So, we wonder, how did Joe Biden get the job? Well, because Joe Biden was the only one left who could stop Bernie Sanders. He had South Carolina coming up. He had a lot of black support in South Carolina because of his association with Obama. So he was used to take Bernie Sanders down in South Carolina. And then all the others started dropping out, the Pete Buttigiegs and the Klobuchars, no doubt offered cabinet positions or whatever to do that. So they all dropped out and the whole race turned on its head. And Bernie was the underdog. Now, they knew that Joe Biden was completely unelectable, but they knew that Bernie was a disaster. Now, Joe Biden is more of the old corporate communist school. He's got his background in Soviet roots, but he's also got like a lot of them, he likes to make money. So he would have fitted in with the new order to a degree, but he's clearly mentally incompetent. So what's going to happen is he's going to choose a VP who is going to be a black female, almost certainly Kamala Harris, and she will be the candidate. She once she's chosen in July, and I'm not saying it's definitely going to be her, but she's the one they want. And she was originally supposed to be the candidate right back in the day, until she got slaughtered by Tulsi Gabbard on one of the debates, and her star started to fall. But so Joe Biden will be used to get Kamala Harris or somebody on the VP ticket. Then either Joe will have an unfortunate medical diagnosis, and for the good of the country, it will be decided he has to stand down, and then Kamala or whoever it is will become the real candidate, and she will choose another VP, probably a Hispanic male or something like that, and they will go on and try and win the election. But if by some chance that Joe Biden actually stays on the ticket, the VP will be the real candidate, just like Sarah Palin was the real candidate when John McCain stood. All the conservatives voted for Sarah Palin, not John McCain. You know, and the new candidate will be the standard bearer of the left, not the hardcore crazy left of Bernie Sanders, but the more, you know, like Kamala Harris comes out of a Maoist background, so she's more in tune with the Chinese model, where there is business, but it's all controlled by the elite. That's where she will fit in, and that's how I see it playing out.
Yeah, that's exactly what the John Birch Society describes an overview of America, that there's only two true systems of government, and one being the oligarchy.
Yeah.
And so Kamala Harris, I look at her as kind of a figurehead. Joe Biden, same way, a figurehead for the oligarchy, because they still want to remain in the shadows.
Yeah, you're right. You know, look, there's two systems of government in world history. Well, I maybe say three, because there have been times where one guy basically has run things, but it's usually a small group. You know, the Soviet Politburo, Hitler and his people around him. There's normally a small group, and the other form is the Republican form of government with a constitution and accountability. That's the two forms that have, you know, been in history, and it's only really the Republican form of government was nearly perfected with the American Constitution, and that was a huge break in history. And the oligarchs, ever since that day, have been trying to bring down this republic, you know, through their secret societies in the 18th and 19th centuries. When Marxism came along, that was their vehicle, and that was been their favored vehicle for a long time now. But the American Republic has been the target of the oligarchies from the day it was founded. And it's a huge testament to the American people that the Republic has managed to stand this far with all that's been ranged against it.
Absolutely. So what I wanted to do, you know, we have about 15 minutes here left of the show. I wanted to make sure that, you know, you really exposed Black Lives Matter and Antifa for exactly who they were last night. And I wanted to make sure that our audience, you know, that weren't able to attend the event, that they were able to actually gain access to this information. So you were talking about, you know, like Liberty Road and all of these different organizations, these shadow organizations that are actually being funded directly by the Communist Chinese. That are giving all this money to Black Lives Matter and Antifa. So can you go ahead and take us down that road again?
Yeah, well, look, I don't know if they've been directly funded. There's so much funding in this country, and a lot of it comes through Chinese companies and that kind of thing. But look, the COVID panic was driven by China, because for two reasons. The first reason, they want to destroy the U.S. economy, and that destroys President Trump, and then that destroys the U.S. military budget. And Russia and China are arming like crazy. Obama gutted the military. Trump's trying to rebuild it, but he can't rebuild it if the economy is in tatters. And so this is really a military attack on America. If American military budget is destroyed, Russia and China run this planet. So we're just starting to recover from this, right? We're just starting to poke our heads over the trenches and think there's a little bit of hope. Then we get three weeks of rioting. Now, all of that, 90% of that rioting is organised by two groups, Liberation Road and the Freedom Road Socialist Organisation, both pro-Chinese communist parties, both absolutely loyal to China. They have some of their members living in China. They take directions from China. They follow the Chinese line. And just coincidentally, these are the groups behind the riots. You know, Antifa's in there, but talking about Antifa as running this is a bit like saying that Mussolini ran the Axis forces in World War II, you know, we're going to fight World War II by taking out Mussolini, forgetting about Hitler, forgetting about Japan. The real danger here is these pro-Chinese communist parties. Freedom Road Socialist Organization, which is mainly based in Minnesota and Illinois and Wisconsin, they ran the riots in Minneapolis. They've got a front group called the National Alliance Against Racial and Political Oppression, and they set that up last year in 2019 November to run the riots this year. These are the people who ran the riots against Trump when he was inaugurated in Ohio in 2016, in Cleveland, Ohio. And at that time, the leader of that group said, "Our mission is to make this country ungovernable, to destroy this president." So they set that up to basically attack the police, cause riots, and create massive division in this country. And it's nothing to do with George Floyd. George Floyd just happened to be the trigger. They were just waiting for a trigger. They had it all planned out, and they knew that, through this summer, a black man somewhere was going to get killed by the cops. And this was just a gift to them. But if it hadn't been him, it would have been somebody in Kentucky the next week, somebody in New York the week after, or somebody in Oregon the week after that. And the other group, Liberation Road, they are the people who started Black Lives Matter. The three girls who started Black Lives Matter, Patrisse Cullors, Alicia Garza, and Opal Tometi, are all long-time Maoist communists affiliated with the Liberation Road group. Now, it was complete concoction. And in Ferguson in 2014, Liberation Road ran that operation through their comrade Jamala Rogers and her Organisation for Black Struggle Front, and they were able to bring 10,000 comrades from around the country into that city to organise those riots. That was a dry run for this election year. And now they run Movement for Black Lives, which is coordinating these riots all over the country. And some of these people are directly connected to Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of Minnesota, and some of them are also connected to Palestinian guerrillas. And just by the way, Freedom Road Socialist Organization has direct ties to Hezbollah, to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is a Marxist-Leninist terrorist group, to the communist guerrillas in Colombia, to the communist guerrillas in the Philippines, and to North Korea and China. So this is a war by the Chinese on the US economy and President Trump. That's all it is. If this was not election year, this would not be happening. 100% guaranteed.
And do you think there's more to come, Trevor? Because last night you spoke right when, basically all of COVID became an afterthought. There was something right around the corner. It's as if we hadn't even taken the COVID decorations down. We were still celebrating COVID season, and yet they create a new catastrophe. And it's as if it was right on cue. And I get the suspicion, Trevor, that there's even more coming.
Look, there is. They call this the summer of freedom. This is going to go on all summer long if it's not stopped. And I think this Trump was right to invoke the Insurgency Act of 1807, the only situation where federal troops can be deployed on U.S. soil, because you know that a lot of these governors in the blue states actually support the rioters. So this is actually a rebellion that goes right up right up the chain of the Democratic Party. But yes, I think there'll be an attempt to sink the US dollar before the elections. I think it's very possible the Iranians might mount an attack to try and provoke a war. I think North Korea might do some crazy stuff. And I think that there's nothing. There might be terrorist acts on American soil. I think there's nothing the globalists and the left will stop at to stop this president. And because if he wins again and he keeps implementing a pro-American agenda, that can set them back 20, 30, 40 years. So I don't want to paint a doom and gloom picture here because, if we lose this, we're in for a world of grief. But if we win, for once, the globalists and their communist allies might actually be pushed back a very long way, and it'll take them a while to regroup. This battle is eternal. This battle is good versus evil. This is God versus Satan. It plays out in politics. It's not going to go away no matter what we do. But sometimes we have victories, and sometimes we push it back. And I think we have an opportunity to do that in America now.
And what it's going to take is Christian patriots standing up and getting involved, getting organized, because the left is extremely organized. And Trevor, I was going to ask you this. Is it fair to say that we are actually in a state of war in America right now?
Yep, this is this is a war directed by China, the United Nations, Iran, Venezuela, and many other countries against this country. And most people are just sitting there thinking, this is a bit strange, but they still get up and go to their restaurants and watch their ball games. They need to understand this is an attempt to bring this country to its knees. And the only thing we're missing now is foreign troops on our soil or an open declaration of war. But this is economic war, biological war, subversive war, propaganda war. This is everything the Nazis were doing during World War II to destroy the United States, except actual shooting at each other. But it is war nonetheless. And war is only a small part of war is the actual battlefield. The major part of war is propaganda and sapping the enemy's will to fight. Well, this whole drama that's going on in this country now is designed to demoralize Americans, frustrate us, turn us against each other, make us lose hope, make us lose faith. So you're absolutely right. The only thing that's going to stop this is people digging deep spiritually and getting out there and standing up, making their voices heard, making their actions count. We need people to stand up more now than any time since the revolution. It is that critical. And if any patriot is thinking about having a holiday in Bermuda for the next month, they are not a patriot, because you are needed here now.
Oh, well said.
You said last night that if you were thinking about writing a check, right now would be the time to double down on a check, or double down on door knocking, doubling down on all your efforts. And I, as a pastor, say that we should double down as Christians on this term right here, this 2020 election. There's a lot of churches, Trevor, that have castigated President Trump. They've literally called him a racist. These are mainstream churches that have aligned against him. These are the same churches, Trevor, that are having, if it's a capacity of 2,000, they're having 200 people in their church. If it's a capacity of 10,000, they have 2,000 people in their church. The pastors have COVID masks, all this. I have to ask you the question, do you know of any churches that have been impacted or infiltrated or getting any connections to the Communist Party? This is kind of a way out there, kind of tinfoil question, but I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if you know of churches that are connected with the same organizations, Freedom Roads, CARE. So elaborate.
Many, hundreds of them. Look, Democratic Socialists of America has a religious commission. They have dozens of Marxist pastors out there. They have many Marxists running seminaries, teaching future pastors. The Communist Party USA has many communist pastors. Their Houston branch alone has 2 communist pastors in their ranks. There are hundreds of them out there, people. My next movie is Enemies Within the Church. Now, there is the direct Communist Party infiltrators in the church who actually have cards, but there are hundreds more who were draft dodgers in the Vietnam era, who went to seminary instead of Vietnam, and fought for socialism in the churches, and are now senior pastors who are now running seminaries and that kind of thing. But there is a huge infiltration of Marxism in the church through the social justice movement, the critical race theory movement, the LGBTQ movement. All of these are Marxist movements that have made huge headways in the church. This is run largely through the Gospel Coalition, through Sojourners, through Jim Wallace and his people. But it's very much penetrated even the Southern Baptists through people like Russell Moore and J.D. Greer.
Wow.
You know, they have critical race theory
These are
now.
all people who've been on my radar. And just you saying the Gospel Coalition is complete confirmation. I just got to say to anybody listening, the Gospel Coalition, steer clear from them.
Absolutely. Tim Keller is basically a devotee of the Frankfurt School of Marxism. Several of his people like Mark Dever and others are pushing pure Marxism in the churches. Now, you know, the Southern Baptists just adopted critical race theory at their recent convention in Alabama. Critical race theory is Marxism. It basically means that instead of the workers rising up to destroy the bosses, the minorities are going to rise up, destroy white Christian capitalism. You know, to them, capitalism is racism. How do you destroy racism? Well, you have to destroy capitalism.
Trevor, in the last
That's
few
what it
seconds
is.
here, I hate to cut you off there, but plug your website real quick for us.
Yeah, trevorloudon.com. trevorloudon.com. Loudon is Loudon. I have some great videos there. People got to watch Enemies Within, and I've got a new book available for sale, White House Reds, exposing the communist background of Joe Biden and others.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining Church and State. Church and State is brought to you in part by Covenant Church and Mountain View Vital Medicine. Always remember the tree of liberty is most likely a birch. And with that, Church and State is out.
God bless. If my people, which are called
27
by my
minutes goes real fast.
It does, doesn't it?
I know. I hate